Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of our Android to Calculator tutorial. And I think 2 episodes ago we ran into a problem of adding rows in the right order or the right spot. So to try and fix that, we created a new diner class in the last episode. And now we're going to continue doing that. So we created the constructor for our class in the last episode, and in this episode, now that we have access to diner objects, we're going to use these to fix the original problem that we ran into 2 episodes ago. Right then, let's start. So what do we do now that we have this diner object, this organizational unit that we can use for, that we can access? What we're going to do is we're going to put this organizational unit into another organizational unit, which seems redundant, but you'll see why soon. We're going to create a list of diner objects, and it's going to hold all of the diners that we create in our app, and then we can use this list to help us solve our programming problems. So let's go up here, and we're going to import, or we should have Eclipse do it. So go down here and make a new variable, and it's going to be of the type ArrayList. And it's going to be called DinerList. And hover over ArrayList and import ArrayList. So what an ArrayList is it is an object that holds, well, let me open up Paint. An ArrayList holds a bunch of other objects of one type. So let's say we have DinerList, and in this DinerList we have a bunch of stuff. We have Diner 1, Diner 2, Diner 3, and each of these things are basically, variables or references to diner objects. Yeah, whatever, right? So an ArrayList holds references to a bunch of objects, and all of these objects have to be one type. And the type it has to be is what you put into these pointy brackets. So we're going to create an ArrayList for diners, so this is what it looks like. And by putting all of these things into an ArrayList, we can then use things like, or we can use methods that have to do with ArrayLists. And we're going to go over one of those methods now to solve this problem. And we're going to use more methods throughout this tutorial because ArrayLists are super helpful as a way to organize objects. So we created a variable that holds an ArrayList that holds diners, and it's called DinerList. Let's assign it here. DinerList equals new ArrayList diner, and then you need actually parentheses here. An ArrayList is an object, which means it has a class, and that means it has a constructor, and the constructor happens to take no arguments, so that's why we don't put anything in here. But right here we assign DinerList to a new ArrayList, and you'll notice that we could have just done this up here. We could have done it in the same line. Personally, I don't like doing that too much for stuff that's created in the onCreate method. For instance, I think it looks better to separate them, and I think it makes the code more easy to understand and to read. Okay, so now that we've assigned it, let's use it. Every time we create a diner object, let's add it to a DinerList. And to do that, we do this. And what this line of code does is, or what the add method does is, it adds whatever it's passed as an argument into this diner list here, this array list. So we put diner in as the argument, which means it'll take the diner we created based on all of the stuff that we generated, and it'll add it to our diner list that we instantiated up here. So now we are going to have a list of every single diner that we generate, and that's going to be helpful. And before we move on, there's one thing we need to do, and that is, I noticed that we haven't actually added the first diner, this guy right here, because as you recall, this guy right here is created automatically when we create the the app based on our XML file. So we have to actually add manually the first item, or the first customer, and we'll do that in the onCreate menu. We already have access to the two edit texts and these two edit texts and these two text views. All we need is access to this image button. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a variable. And let's assign it. Okay, now that we have all 5 of these elements of our first customer, we can create a new diner. And we'll pass it the 5 elements here as the arguments for its constructor. Oh, and if you're wondering, constructor is spelled this way if you want to do further research. Again, it's the thing that's run for a class automatically when you create an object from it. And all of these things are going to be defined on my website, as well as with glossary links to better definitions under the Android to Calculator tutorial. Anyway, let's go back to this, and there's going to be a link in the description to that website. So we create a diner, and we can call it diner here even though we used the diner name already because it's in a different function, so it doesn't matter. This is on click and this is on create. So we're going to create a diner based on these 5 things, and these 5 things are part of the first customer. We're going to create a diner based off of that, and let's add this first customer to the diner list. And let's move this above that code. Okay, so now our diner list includes everything including the first customer. It includes the first customer with this code, and then every subsequent customer, it goes here. Or it adds it here. So now we're ready to start actually fixing the problem that we had in the beginning. So our problem was here. We added the view row 2 to main table at number 14, but we can't just use 14 because the 14 does not change based on how many customers there are, and we need that to change so that it always goes at the end of the split bill portion here. So what you can replace 14 with is this. Right here. And I keep forgetting to zoom in. Hopefully you guys can see, at least in the HD version of this YouTube video. So dinerList.size brackets times 2 plus 12. What does that mean? So dinerList is our array list, and it holds every diner that we have. And .size is a method that returns the size of dinerList. That is to say, how many elements are in dinerList, count that, and then give us that number. So the size will be 1 when the app first starts, and every time you press add diner button, it'll add another diner, and then dinerList.size will be a higher number. Now we multiply that by 2, and then we add 12. Why did we do that? Well, first let's run the app. And give it 1 second to start up. Okay, let's click and see what happens. Okay, so far so good. Let's click again. Let's click again. Let's click again, and again. Alright, let's look down, and look, how great is that? It looks exactly as it should look. And why is that? Well, let's look at the code. So the first time they click this button, dinerList.size is going to resolve to 1 because there's only 1 customer when the app first starts. Multiply that by 2 is equal to 2, then add 12, that's 14. So it goes right under here in row 14, just like when we had the static number 14 here. When we click it again, dinerList.size is going to return 2 because there'll be 2 diners at that point. So this becomes 2 times 2 is 4, plus 12 it becomes 16 instead of 14. And then it adds it to row 16. And then when there's 3 customers, it becomes 3 times 2 times plus 12, which is 18. So why does that matter? Let's go and restart this app. Maybe I can explain better that way. Okay, right now, when we click, it's going to put it into row 14. Now, we can't add it to row 14 again because now we have this extra row here, this row. And we also have this extra row here that we just created. So we need to add it 2 rows down to 16. And that's what we do. We add, we click the button, and now it adds it to row 16. And now we have another 2 rows that we have to deal with. We have 4 extra rows total up here and another 4 extra rows total here. So instead of adding it to row 14, we have to add it to row 18. And that's what the button does. And that's how it works. Basically, every time you add a new row, you need to account for every single customer that was added before. And the number of customers that was added before, you multiply that by 2 because each customer generates 2 rows. 1 row up here and 1 row down here. So 2 times the number of customers you have, then plus 12, because there are 12 static rows that don't change, like this row, pre-tax bill, the tip rows, the tax row, the grand total row, all these black lines are also rows. So there's 11 of those rows, so that's constant. And then, again, 2 rows for each customer. So 2 times the number of customers plus 12 will get you the row that is underneath the last row of split bill. Okay? So 11 constant rows, and then plus 2 times the diner list, and then plus 1 to get to the last row. So that's plus 12 total. And that's what that thing does. Okay, before we end this video, and hopefully that made sense, before we end this video, let's go ahead and use this to fix our main table here. So right now what this row is doing is, here, let me show you an infographic. Okay. I guess that's not quite ready yet. Okay, never mind. I'll just show you in Paint. Let's go back to Eclipse for a sec. We have main table.addView row to row number 2 of main table. And actually, you know what, let's rename row to row 1 to distinguish it better from row 2. So row 1, row 1, row 1. Add row 1 to column or to row number 2. What does that do? Well, let's pretend this is the main table. And when we add a new customer to row number 2, it's going to add it right here near the top. That's an arrow. That's a terrible arrow. Right here. That's where each new row is going, because it's always row 2 and this is row number 2, because we have pre-tax bill up here. Anyway, what we probably wanted to do is... hold on, my mouse is bugging out. Oh, I have no batteries left in my mouse, so that's why it's going to start acting up soon. Like, right now. Okay. So instead of adding it there, we want each new row probably to go at the end, right here, just like it does in our split bill section. Oh god, I'm terrible at drawing arrows. So right there, we want each new row to come at the end. So let's fix that. How do we get it to be at the end? Again, we need to adjust to how many customers there are. So let's use this. Add row 1 to the number, or to the row number that is equal to the size of the current diner list. Plus 1, I think. So when there's one diner list, or when there's one diner, add it to row 2. When there's 2 diners, add it to row 3. When there's 3 diners, add it to row 4. And yeah. So that is all we're going to do in this video. Hopefully it all made sense. So we finally made use of our diner class and our array list. And in the future we're going to keep using them because they're very useful tools for app making. So now that this app is working, or this button is working a lot better, we're going to see you guys in the next tutorial. Alright, bye. Hi guys, sorry, I have one short addendum. Okay, so I just wanted to remind everybody that when you're adding a view to main table, the row number that you pass to it starts with an index of 0. So if you want to add a row to the first row of main table, you would pass an index value of 0 and not 1. So quickly, let me just go through an example. Right here we have our basic setup, and if you count, there are 11 immutable rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 immutable rows. So those rows don't change. And then when we first set up, there are 2 rows that are based on how many customers we have. So 1, 2. That means there are 13 rows up here before this before where we want to insert a new row here. 13 rows. But remember, when we click the addDiner button, first we create another row here before we create a row here. So that means when we add the row, it'll actually be number 14 rows before it. So we'll have 14 rows before it, which means we want to insert it as the 15th row. And when we insert it as the 15th row, the number we pass is not 15, but 14. That's how we get it there. So that's why the number is 14. 11 immutable rows, plus 2 rows because of how many customers there are, plus 1 row because of we create that row before we actually get down here. So that's 14 rows ahead of it. We pass 14, and that makes it the 15th row. Okay, great. Sorry for any confusion that there might have been. See you guys next time.